Mm. Well, hello there, everyone. Paul Engel here with the Constitution Study. You may notice I've got a slightly different setup today. I'm trying something new. We're going to see how it works. I'm glad you could join me. Those of you who are joining me live, thank you very much. For those of you who are following the recording, gee, it'd be really nice if you could join live. We could have questions and interactions. And I think that's the best part of doing these live streams is actually interacting with people. As many of you know, I have been booted from Facebook. So if you know that someone who's been following on Facebook or groups where I was involved in Facebook, if you want to send them a link, hey, send them over to the website, constitutionstudy.com. In fact, I'm looking at it right now. It is showing the live stream I am still on YouTube. I am on Periscope and live right now on the Constitution Study if you want to go check that out there. Today's going to be an interesting discussion. Part of it is because, well, it's 2021. And if we thought that, in 2020 was done, we'd be over with it. Oh, Lord, were we wrong? 2021 is already shaping up to be a bigger dumpster fire than 2020 was. And we're just 2 weeks into it. So buckle up, friends. It's going to be a bumpy ride. As always, listen, this is about interactions and answering questions. So if you've gotten the invitation, if you registered on the website, and I apologize, I've been doing some updates to the back-end system, and the live stream sign up is temporarily suspended while I'm trying to get the calendaring software to work right. But if you previously had registered, you can join the Zoom call. I will be opening that up hopefully again later this month, meaning not only can we interact, another place for you to see what's going on, but it gives us a chance to interact either verbally or face-to-face over the internet. And I think that works really better. And if you've got a question, it's a lot easier to have an interaction if we're both on the same platform rather than, I answer a question in the chat. Someone asks a question in the chat, I answer it, 3 other comments come in, and then there's a follow. It becomes very disjointed. So I do apologize. I've been moving off of some other platforms, and I'm trying to consolidate. And the calendaring software, unfortunately, I have yet to find a calendaring tool that understands 2 programs a month. If I do it weekly, it's fine. If I do it monthly, it's fine. Even if I did it every other week, it's fine. But 2 broadcasts a month just seems to confuse these guys, and I haven't figured out a way around that yet. But again, this is about interaction. So if you're on YouTube, Periscope, even if you're on the website, you can put a comment in, and I will see that, and we'll try and answer that. And I love questions, and I'm sure if whether it's about the election reform that I'm going to talk about in a minute, or it's just the insanity that the United States of America has become, I'm sure we have an opportunity for some really interesting conversations. So I had scheduled a week or 2 ago to talk about election reform for one very simple reason. You see, there's this gentleman who's going to be the president of the United States in a week or so. And he's proposing election reform, and he's not the first, right? There's been plenty of people who looked at the dumpster fire that was the 2020 elections and said, we need to do something. The problem is everybody's talking about getting Washington, D.C. to do something, which is the worst. Not only is it the worst, it's really the wrong place to do it. It's the worst place to do it. So I wanted to have a discussion about election reform and what we should be doing, what things we should consider, and all that. So let me do this. I did make myself some notes because I have a mind like a steel sieve. So the first thing I want people to recognize, first thing I want them to understand, there is only one federal election in this country. I'm going to repeat that because it confuses a lot of people. There is only one federal election in this country. Now, anybody want to take a guess at what that is? Because it's important, because I'll give people a moment to guess, but if they're not federal elections, well, then whose elections are they? Who controls the election? And the answer is the states. And I'm telling you that every election that you participate in is not a federal election. It is a state election. By the way, that's a clue to the answer to the question of what is the one federal election that we have. Anybody take a guess yet? Not seeing any guesses. Well, here's the answer. The only federal election in the United States is when the presidential electors cast their votes within the states. In other words, Now, Article 2, the electors meet in their states and they cast their vote for president. That is the only federal election that exists in this country. Now, you may be asking, well, what happens when we voted for president? Well, you didn't vote for president. You voted for electors for president. You voted to appoint your state's electors. So, but what about the House and the Senate? What about the Congress? Isn't that a federal? No, that's a state election. If we look at Article 1, Section 2, the House of Representatives shall be composed of members chosen every second year by the people of the several states. Makes sense, right? But what's interesting is in Article 1, Section 4, we read, the times, places, and manner of holding elections for senators and representatives shall be prescribed in each state by the legislature thereof, but Congress may at any time by law make or alter such regulations, except as to the places of choosing electors. See, the states control the elections. Now, yes, Congress can pass a law that alters the place, the time and manner of choosing, of holding elections. And that's where things get a little crazy. That's kind of like the loophole where people are saying, well, the federal government needs to get involved. The biggest, if there's one thing that has led to the problem of the 2020 election, it's expecting Washington, D.C. to fix anything. Washington, D.C., the federal government is not designed to deal with things like this. They are designed to look at primarily interstate and foreign matters and deal with them. They are not designed to deal with the domestic issues and the other matters that are within a state. Anti-federalists, hang on to that question because I'll answer that in just a minute. Hello, Scott G from Texas. So the other place that we want to look is in Article 1, Section 5, Clause 1 reads, each house shall be the judge of the elections, returns, and qualifications of its own members. That does mean that if the House of Representatives can look at the elections and the returns and the qualifications of other House members, and the Senate can do it for other senators, but that's not the same as controlling the election. And then, of course, I already mentioned this, but in Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2, each state shall appoint in such manner as a legislature thereof may direct a number of electors equal to the whole number of senators and representatives to which the House may be entitled in Congress. Right? One more quote, one more article from the Constitution, that is the Amendment 17, one of the two amendments that destroyed the Republic. Amendment 17 says the Senate of the United States shall be composed of 2 senators from each state, elected by the people thereof for 6 years. Okay, what does all that mean, and what does that have to do with the recent November elections? Hey, hello from North Carolina, Kevin. Glad you could join us. So, if we look at what happened on November 3rd in 2020, there's a lot of accusations. There's a lot of eyewitnesses. There's a lot of testimony. There's a lot of sworn affidavits. There are videos. But all those problems happened in those states, right? Pennsylvania, Georgia, Michigan, I think even Arizona. Those happened in those states. And let's face it, the states are a mess. We, the people, have let the states become impotent little subjects of a federal government. They didn't do their job. We let them get away with it. Because trust me, the idea of voter fraud is nothing new. I've been around 57 years, and I still remember, as long as I can remember, when it comes to Chicago, the answer has always been vote early, vote often. All right. So this idea is absolutely nothing new. And that means if we want to fix it, we really need to fix it at the state level, which is actually good news, right? Because your representative in the House of Representatives represents about 750,000 people. I think on average it works out to about 750,000 people. You can't make that big a stink if you're one of 750,000 people. Now, your senator represents the whole state. So some states that's really big, some states that's really small. But here's the interesting thing. Whether it's a assemblyman or some places call it a house, Mr. Coachman in the house, hey, glad to see you here. Regardless of what it's called, they represent a lot fewer people. And I will give you some examples where I live here in Tennessee. It's kind of crazy now, but I'm working with my state representative and I'm trying to get engaged with my state senator to make sure that what happened in Georgia and Michigan and Pennsylvania and everywhere cannot happen in Tennessee. Right now, there's two important points to that. One is, yes, I'm focusing at the state level. I'm actually trying to I plan on talking to my county board of elections as well to get some information from them. But I'm not looking for the federal government to fix it. I'm looking for the states to fix it. Why? Because the states are closer to the people and they would recognize the unique needs of a state. Right. For example, like I said, I now live in Tennessee. I spent most of my life in New York State. Yes, I'm escapee from the empire. And November in Tennessee is a lot different from November in upstate New York. Right? Upstate New York, you've got snow. You don't really get much snow down here in Tennessee all winter, certainly none in November. So there are issues that have to be dealt with. I want to talk about some ideas and bounce some of those around. But if we want to look at election reform, we should resist the urge and the push to have it done at the federal level because it will be one size fits none. It will make things worse, not better. Now, for those states that do have more serious problems than others, we need to see how we can help them. But if we understand that there's a reason why our founding fathers left voting as a state level issue, not a federal issue. We don't want, the federal government's already over empowered as it is. They've taken so much more power than they're actually legally authorized to. The last thing I want to do is give them more. So let's resist that urge. And anti-federalists, I love your moniker. The anti-federalists were right. I put things a little differently. For those of you who don't know, when the Constitution was signed, as it was being ratified, there were two factions. They didn't really call themselves political parties the way we think of them today. There were two factions, the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. The Federalists wanted a strong central government. That's where we got the Federalist Papers. There were three Federalists that were writing essays in support of the Constitution. The Anti-Federalists, though, there were also a set of Anti-Federalist papers, and they were concerned about a strong central government. And the way we recognize that today is we have a Bill of Rights because the Anti-Federalist said we will not support the Constitution unless there is a Bill of Rights protecting the rights of the individual. So that's what the Anti-Federalists are right. The funny part is the Federalists said we don't need a Bill of Rights because the Constitution doesn't give the federal government, the authority to infringe on rights. The Anti-Federalists said, yeah, but we know they will anyway. Both of them were right. So Anti-Federalists, what happens if the House and Senate votes to object the electoral votes that were sent from the states? Would that electoral vote be sent back to the states? Well, let's deal with two things. According to U.S. Title 3 of the U.S. Code, and I believe it's Section 15, if when a state certificate is opened and the vote tally is read in the Congress, if a member of the House of Representatives and a member of the Senate in writing object to that certificate, they have to be specific of why they're objecting to it. No nonsense. They're only allowed to say, we object to this because, ring, ring, ring. You need one from the House, one from the Senate. Then the House and the Senate separate and they vote on the objection. And if both houses agree that the objection is valid, then that slate of electors is thrown out. Now, here's the interesting thing. That whole process is unconstitutional. I challenge anyone to show me where in the Constitution Congress is given the authority to challenge, determine, in any way vet the electors or their votes. It does not exist. They are there. They have two roles. They're there to count. And once it's counted, they announce who the vice president announce who the winner is. Well, it's the president of the Senate, which is the vice president. Unless he's not there, then it's technically the president pro tem. That's the only role Congress has in the presidential election, is they witness the counting of the votes from the electors. And that whole process is unconstitutional. Now, if you follow the Constitution study and you paid attention to a couple of my articles or videos, you'll see we had Gohmert's Gambit, which was an absolute, I mean, it was a disaster. It was I was embarrassed for Mr. Gohmert. You know, I was just embarrassed that anybody with a law degree would come up with such, let's call it barnyard substance. I mean, it was an absolute dumpster fire. But then again, you had what Attorney General Ken Paxton did in Texas. He had this beautiful lawsuit set up. He had a hanging curveball. It was just hanging out over the plate. All he had to do was swing at it and say, listen, Pennsylvania, and I believe Michigan, and I forget which other ones, they changed the manner of choosing electors in violation of the Constitution. Therefore, those slates of electors are invalid. That's all he had to do. He said, listen, the Constitution says the legislature determines the manner of appointing electors. I'm more familiar with the case in Pennsylvania, where you had the court order a change, and then you had a member of the executive branch enter a consent decree that said they were going to change the manner of determining the appointment of electors. That was not done through the legislation. Therefore, those electors are invalid. Hello, unapologetic Christian. So what actually could have happened, or what should have happened, and by the way, that is not unique. All right, the challenging, the objecting to electors was not unique to 2020. It happened in 2016, and I believe it happened in both 2000 and 2004 as well. I know it happened in 2016. So everybody who said it's unprecedented, unheard of, they're wrong. Okay, so let's talk about if we want, and I agree, there needs to be election reform. We need to fix we really need to fix how elections are handled in the United States. What we don't need to do is make it a federal case, right? Here's what we need to do. All right, elections period, but especially in this country, need to meet three basic criteria. They need to be free, they need to be fair, and they need to be transparent. Right? So, free. Okay. Everybody who is legally eligible to vote should be free to vote. I don't think that's really very controversial, but when I moved here, when I started doing some research about the Battle of Athens, Tennessee, I know that being free to vote has not always been the case throughout the country. In fact, if you want an interesting read, do some research on the Battle of Tennessee. I've got some on the website if you want to follow that. But it should be free, which means, I agree, you shouldn't have a poll tax. They shouldn't make it unnecessarily burdensome, but that doesn't mean it necessarily has to be easy. What do I mean? I am fully in favor of a photo ID requirement for voting for one very simple reason. You cannot have a fair election without proof of identity. And things like signature verification are iffy. As I understand it, signature verification is it's a threshold, right? They don't hold they don't hold the signature up, put the two of them together and say they must match 100% because we're human. We never sign our name exactly the same way twice. So they need to have some fudge factor in it. Well, how much fudge factor is enough? Is it 90% the same? Is it 80% the same? Is it 50% the same? Becomes very subjective. Whereas a photo ID, well, for one thing, that photo ID is it's a photograph, and for the most part, yeah, my hair turned gray and I started wearing glasses, but you look at my picture from me when I was 18 years old, and you look at me now, you can pretty much tell it's still the same guy. The other thing is, photo IDs are issued by governments. Again, here's the point. The idea that a photo ID, for the most part, means that's the actual ID of the person. Yes, there are fake IDs, there are fraudulent IDs, but they're harder to make. It's real easy for me to walk into a government office and say, yeah, I'm so-and-so, and I live at this address. And here I have a bill. Yeah, I happen to swipe it from this guy's mailbox, but whatever. I have a bill with the name I'm claiming to be and the address, and I sign the thing. Okay. I mean, in some of the states, they weren't even comparing the signatures to the registration. They were comparing the signature to the absentee ballot request. Well, how do you know that the person requesting the ballot was the person who was actually registered to vote? You don't. So they need to be free, but they don't necessarily need to be that easy. I'm motor voter laws and this, register when you show up. Those, I'm not that settled with them. I don't think they're the biggest problem, but I'm not that settled with them. I think if they're done properly, they create more work, right? Motor voter, not a big deal. If it's a question of, can I register to vote when I get my driver's license? Fine. Yeah, no problem with that. It's these ideas, these states where they say everybody who gets a driver's license is automatically registered to vote. No, if you're, we really should be a little more particular than that. And of course, it's got to be free from intimidation. Now, there was evidence in previous elections. I didn't see any in this one of people standing outside a ballot box with batons in their hand, a polling station with batons in their hand. I'm sorry, that's intimidation. That should not be allowed. It's illegal. It should be prosecuted. But there's one other interesting point, and that is it needs to be free to choose. What do I mean? Well, I just wrote an article in Media Research Center commissioned a survey, a poll, and something on the order of it was like 4.6% of the Biden vote. No, sorry. 15% of people who admitted they voted for Biden had not heard about the financial issues that Hunter Biden was in and that Joe Biden might be involved. Right? They hadn't heard it. Of those, I forget what the number was, a percentage. It turned out to be a total of like 4.6 of Biden's entire vote said they would not have voted for him had they known. Why do I say free to choose? What we had this year and what we've had for the last 4 years is a glaring example of media filtering information, where you had damaging information to one candidate that was suppressed. The New York Post had their Twitter account shut down when they brought up this Hunter Biden issue. So, you know, but then you have you have false information about another candidate that keeps getting repeated. Now, here's the thing. If you're free to choose, it's not the media's responsibility to inform you. They are a method of informing you, but it's not their job. They aren't to be trusted. I'm sorry. They aren't to be trusted. They've proven themselves untrustworthy. But if you only get your information from one set of sources, or one source, or from a source that has shown repeated bias, your choice is being manipulated. I was emailing somebody earlier this week, and I made the point. I said, listen, before you accuse somebody of something, you may want to double check that the media report that you received is actually accurate, because it's amazing. You know, if read my articles, how many of my articles start out with, you know, I read this, and when I investigated, I found out it was wrong. I mean, that's got to be 2/3, 3/4 of my articles start out with, there was this article, and when I investigated, it was wrong. Right? So our choice is being manipulated, and this year was a perfect example. Couple things. So Scott G, a video of a person signing a ballot. Again, signing a ballot compared to what? Right? You know, if in my state I'm required to provide a photo ID to register and to sign, and then any signature verification goes against that, that's better than nothing. But to me, why not just have a photo ID? I live in Tennessee. I walked up to the voting place. I showed them my ID. They, filled out the form. They handed me the piece of paper, and I went to vote. My wife was with me. My wife doesn't drive. My wife is in a wheelchair. My wife doesn't drive. She has a driver's license. Right. And she went up, she handed her photo ID and, signed the thing, and we went and voted. Why is that so hard? And why is it such a difficult concept? Now, I agree. I'm not saying it has to be a driver's. It has to be a photo ID, and you have to be able to get one for free. Now, I don't know what 90 some odd % of Americans have a state issued driver's license, or a passport, or I suppose would work, or anything like that. But for the very small percentage that do not have any sort of government issued photo ID, let them get one for free. I just fill out a form, and voila, it shows up in the mail. So I'm a little, it's like, okay, so they have a video, but again, if I'm impersonating somebody else and I request a ballot and I sign to request a ballot, and you have a video of me signing, again, what are you comparing it to? That's what I said. Signature verifications are a little iffy. Let's take a look, make some questions here. If they knew it, they would not have voted for him. It was 60% of the entire. No, I believe Apologetic Christian was 16% of the people who voted for Biden, not 16% of the entire vote. Media has called an elder vet to take his own. So, all right, unapologetic. That's a tough one. For those who don't see, the Unapologetic Christian said the media's disinformation campaign has caused an elder vet to take his own life yesterday. What do you do with the elders, though? They aren't privy to news and technology. I think it's very simple. And I think most people are not going to like my answer. My answer is to stop waiting for someone else to do it for you. Take care of the elder. My father is 78 years old. He's still with us. Listen, it's kind of a sidetrack, but I believe that we have a moral responsibility for the elders in our family. And I believe we have a moral responsibility for those of our neighbors that need assistance. And part of that is exposing them to information. When I talk to my father and my stepmother, I bring up information, and I watch it. I can tell when my father's had enough, right? But but we should be caring for those. If they don't have access to information, well, can we help them? My father's fine with a computer, but my mother-in-law, when she was around, she didn't own a computer, didn't know anything about a computer. So it was, we have to take responsibility for the moral responsibility for others, not the legal responsibility, but the moral responsibility. And to me, if a vet took their own life because of what the media was doing, I really wish there were other people around that cared enough to be involved with this person and see what they were going through. Because I think that's, forget the media part. Just, as people get older, they have needs, and can we care for them? So I know it's a bit of a sidetrack, but let's see. Quantum voting, blockchain style, like Bitcoin, but for voting. Unapologetic Christian, I spent 30 years in the IT industry. And I will tell you one thing that is if there's anything that's a provable fact in the IT industry, is every system can be hacked. Every system can be hacked. But again, let's stop and back up for a second, because I've been talking about free elections. What about fair elections? Now, here's the important point, right? Yes, I want everybody who can legally vote, they should be allowed to vote. No questions asked. I also believe that only those who can legally vote are to be allowed to vote. Okay. Quantum voting, blockchain. How do I know that the person with that app is actually the person they're claiming to be and is legally allowed to vote? Now, I'm all about making life easier, but there are certain things that should be worth the effort. Right? So, okay, if you're talking about blockchain, and part of me is reminded, I forget what movie it was. It had Robin Williams in it, and he does this bit where he talks about, in the space agency, NASA, when they were going to the moon, they spent thousands and thousands of dollars developing a pen that would write in zero gravity. The Russians used a 10-cent pencil. Sometimes you don't need a big, complicated system. All you need is something simple. So let me talk to you about what I think it would be the proper voting method. Step number one is you must register before your vote and prove that you are eligible. Right? I don't like the idea of walking in, voting the same day, because in order to do that, you got to segregate the votes and prove them afterwards. It makes a mess of it. If you're going to vote, it's not too much to ask for you to register beforehand. It's not that hard. And, okay, you're registered to vote. You show up at your polling place. You show them your photo ID, government issue photo ID, that is checked against a database to make sure that you have only voted once, that you haven't gone to another polling place or gotten an absentee ballot and all that other nonsense. Then you are issued a ballot. Now, I'm less concerned with whether or not it's paper or digital, but here's what I require. Here's what I positively require of a voting machine. When I'm done voting, before the vote is counted, I get a screen that tells me this is your vote. Lists every vote, who I voted for, every case, who I voted for. A piece of paper prints out saying this is who you voted for. You say, yes, that piece of paper is my vote. That's my ballot. That's everything I want. Then I hit okay. Then I take that piece of paper and I hand it to a polling worker, so that it gets recorded for an audit trail. Now, that piece of paper can have a number encoded on it, so we can be, it can be sure it's not duplicated and enter. But what I have then is I have two very important things. See, in order for a vote to be free, in order for a vote to be fair, and in order for a vote to be transparent, I must have a chain of custody from the point the ballot is issued, whether it be a paper ballot or a key to a digital ballot. There must be a chain of custody from the time I am issued the ballot, from the time the ballot is issued to the time it is recorded. It must be in the sole control of the person casting the ballot. Okay, if they need assistance, there can be processes, but the general process is from the time the ballot is issued until it is recorded, it must be in the control of the person casting the vote. Period. End of story. It must have a paper audit trail. It must have an indelible audit trail, meaning that vote cannot be changed after the fact. None of this, oh, well, it's recorded on a USB key. No, that can be changed. That can be hacked. There must be an indelible. And okay, maybe you could go to blockchain, but the problem is blockchains only work when the systems are networked together. And one of the things is these cannot be networked together. They cannot be accessible from the outside world. Period. End of story. Otherwise, they can be hacked. So we have chain of custody. We have an indelible audit trail, and there must be absolutely, positively no method of changing the vote once it is cast. If the vote is not recorded properly, it is spoiled, it is discarded. Period. End of story. If you, especially with the newer machines where you're pressing buttons, if you can't figure out, if you press the buttons and you get a piece of paper and the piece of paper says who you voted for, and you still can't figure out how to do that right, really, I'm not sure, you are actually qualified to vote, because either you've assumed room temperature or there's a problem. There's something wrong with that, right? Those are the three things that we need. And when I'm going to my state legislators, I'm asking them, A, are we using Dominion machines? If they have to be, no. If a Dominion machine, because the vote can be changed after the fact, no good. If the vote can be changed after the fact, it is not a fair election, because somebody has the power to steal your vote. Period. End of story. No. Do these things have paper audit trails? Can you go back and count vote by vote? Okay, yeah, I can take a stack of these and stick them in a machine and let the machine do the counting. But at some point, if I have to have a room full of people going 1, 2, 3, I need to be able to do that. Otherwise, I have no proof that the vote cast is actually the one that is counted. All right. So those are the two things I'm talking about. It's like, how do we make sure what happened in Georgia and happened in Philadelphia never, ever, ever happens here? Meaning we cannot have, it has to be an indelible vote. And, we have to have a paper audit trail. Okay. Sorry. Let's see what else we got here. That's why I told my friend, but I can't add salt to the wound. Yeah, family matters are difficult, and family matters are messy. And, if we all piled up the regrets we had for things that we did or didn't do, you know what? The whole world will tip over. It is sad. I remember when I was a young man, much younger man, there's a family that lived at the end of our road. I lived out in the country. My parents lived out in the country. There's a family that lived at the end of the road, and they moved in. So I'd known them for several years, right? Mom and dad had a restaurant, Italian restaurant, great food. I went to high school with two of the boys. The youngest was a daughter who was, I think she was a freshman when I was a senior. So, I knew the family, and, they had gone off for a vacation, and the daughter came home early because she was just starting college. and killed herself. And nobody had a clue. And it was devastating. I mean, I can't imagine what the family went through. I was simply a friend of the family, and I was stunned to believe that a beautiful, lovely, happy young lady, starting her life, everything looked fine. It looked about as close to the perfect life you expect, and that happened. And it's tough, and it never changes things. But it's also one of the reasons why, my sister and I don't want to say keep an eye on our dad, but we're involved in what's going on. My sister moved to be closer to my dad just to be sure one of us was there. She wanted to spend time with him as he's getting older. He's still got his senses. I mean, he's still in good health, but and sometimes that isn't possible. There's a lot of things that are going on, but I rarely think that a single event like media disinformation would lead someone to that to me is that's the final step in a much longer chain of events. So that's that. I mean, it's a tragedy. I mean, I don't even know who the family is, but I'll pray for them, because I can't imagine what that family's feeling like. I shudder to think. So, all right. Politics become very polarized. Bad things will happen soon. 1,000 National Guard is stationed on the streets in DC. I'd say not just politics are polarized. I'd say you take a look around, the entire nation's become polarized. We have Monday's article talks about freedom of speech. And there's a line I heard, I tracked it down to Evelyn Beatrice Hall. And when I was a young man, this saying to me epitomized freedom and liberty. It epitomized free speech. And the quote is, "I despise what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it." And that idea that people don't have to agree with me, that people can have different ideas, they can have different opinions, they should be allowed to live their lives even though I disagree with it, is being lost in America. And I think politics are part of it, but I think in many ways, what we see in politics, it reminds you of what George Washington said. In fact, let me find the quote. It was his, I believe it was farewell address. I keep some of these quotes around because they inspire me. Here we go. Where'd it go? I just had it. Oh, I moved the screen and it lost it. There we go. Spirit of party. This is from George Washington's farewell address in 1796. "The alternate domination of one faction over another, sharpened by the spirit of revenge natural to party dissension, which in different ages and countries has perpetuated the most hard enormities, is itself a frightful despotism." Now, he goes on to a lot of other things, but I agree. Political parties are the destruction of the Union. The republic is being torn apart, and political parties in many ways are the ones whipping the chariots to tear us apart. But it's not just political parties. Again, I had an email from someone, and I'm glad they emailed. I am glad. I sent out an email to everyone who's signed up at the Constitution Study, looking for guidance as to what to do about social media in 2021. With everything that's going on, I want their input. What do they think? And I mentioned that, I had been banned from Facebook, and this person's response was, "Well, you probably deserved it." And I said, "Really? What did I do?" I mean, you've been involved enough to actually either get a free book or sign up for something at the Constitution Study for me to get your email address. What have I done? You know, if you believe in free speech, that means I have to allow people to say things that I find absolutely abhorrent, disgusting, despised, because I want the freedom to say what I want. I need to allow them the freedom to say what they want. That idea, if not lost in America, it's all but gone. It's, you know, and it's not just the social media. It's not just the politics. It's not just the television media. It's the very idea. Look at how many people, whether it's a mask order, whether it's a what someone said, how many people try to destroy someone because of what they say or what they think? How many? For years, we've been warning about what's going on in college campuses. We're being taught, you know, we're going to shout this person out. We're not going to allow this person to speak to us. We're not going to allow this person to speak to someone else on our campus. Why? Because someone told us they're a Nazi. We've lost the idea of free speech. We've lost the idea of unalienable rights, that liberty means if I want liberty, I must grant to others the liberty to live in a way I disagree with. That as long as their actions do not directly harm me, physically, directly harm me, they should be allowed to do it. There are a lot of people that live ways I thoroughly disagree with. I find disgusting, despicable. It's not my job to tell them they can't. But I'm getting some good comments here today. That's great. So yeah, politics, to me, politics are, they're not just a symptom, but I think they see a lot. They're not the driving force. They're just the one that becomes most visible because they're in our faces all the time. At the end of the day, you're going to have to rely on some type of computer hackable system. I disagree, Apologetic Christian. No, I don't have to depend on a computer hackable system, because I've lived when we didn't, do you realize I'm old enough? I voted before computers, at least before they were properly available. I voted before the internet. There is no reason. I spent 30 years in IT. I spent 30 years working in data centers on systems and dealing with system security. You do not need to have a hackable system. It is all you need. And I said before, all you need is, I need a system where that's not connected to the internet, where the actual voter is in control of the ballot from the time it is issued to the time it is recorded, and that record is indelible. It cannot be changed, and I can prove it through some sort of record. And all it takes is a piece of paper. I'm not saying that the count has to be on the piece of paper. I'm just saying there has to be a piece of paper that someone can manually count at some point, and voila, it becomes very hard to hack a piece of paper. Now, we can add more security to it, such as security codes, right? You put a QR code on there that uniquely identifies the ballot so that you can't run it through multiple times. They're very simple systems. You don't have to do that. It does not have to be a hackable system. There are, it's okay. So yeah. The violence in DC, that was a mess. I agree that they should be found, they should be arrested, they should be tried, and if convicted, right? If convicted in a court of law, they should be punished, regardless of who it is. And I've been listening to one podcaster, and I've been very frustrated because he links the start of what happened in DC to President Trump's speech, which I think is not only incorrect, I believe it's blatantly unfair. we've had years. We've had, God, what now? 15 years, 14 years of people being told that they are Nazi, racist, homophobic, worst human beings in the world based on who they voted for. How long is someone supposed to put up with that before somebody's going to snap? We have evidence of malfeasance during the election. Was all of it, is some of it explainable? Is it all fraud? No. Is it explainable? Maybe. Would it have changed the outcome? We'll never know. But you can't have blatant evidence of malfeasance and have it be ignored and swept under the rug and not have people react. Now, did some people react poorly? Yeah. It's not surprising, but you cannot use that type of as psychological warfare on someone and not be surprised when some people break. Now, doesn't make it right. Doesn't mean they don't need to be punished. But you can't lay the blame at one person when you've had a decade plus of calling people like the most horrid things simply because they didn't vote the way you want. All right, let's see. So if the audit is done and some Nancy decides to throw your paper ballot away because she doesn't like, again, all right, so that's why I said the ballot's issued. It has a tracking number on it, and you have the same scenario. But it's also why. So part of the transparent. I didn't get to this. Part of a transparent election means all counting is done in public. Right? It's very simple. In order for it to be, there should be absolutely no counting without poll watchers from all interested parties. And right now we've got two primary parties. Maybe you have a third party, right? There should be whatever candidates, they should have their poll watchers free and fair access to each and every counter every moment they are in contact with the ballots. From the time they are left in a box, issued, whatever, they have to be observed by all sides. It has to be, sunlight is the best disinfectant. It has to be done out in the open. Most of the malfeasance that we've seen reports of, not all of it, but a lot of it happened when? At night, when people weren't around, right? Now, again, is it going to eliminate all fraud? No, it's not going to eliminate all fraud. Our job is to make fraud as difficult as possible, so it's as unproductive as possible. And if hey, you know what? When I go to a bank for a safe deposit box, right, and I sign my name and I provide my ID and I have a key, and the bank has a key, and I can't get into my box unless both people show up with a key. How hard is it to have a lockbox, have a safe? You have one key is in candidate A's hand, one key is in candidate B's hand, and one key is in the county, election board's hand. Okay, three of us need to show up before those votes can be counted, before they can be touched, and we stay until they go back into the safe. It's not that hard. Does it take a little extra work? Probably, but the idea that someone, same scenario, that someone can look at it and say, no, I don't like that one and throw it away. No, they are changing the vote. The system cannot allow that. And it really isn't that hard to do that. And even, let's take the next scenario that says, okay, someone breaks the lock, they grab the votes, they do whatever, and all of a sudden we have missing votes. Okay, we know who had access to that. Prosecute them. I'm waiting to see a lot more prosecutions based on what happened back in November. I'm not holding my breath, but okay. I've been thinking about Gab. I've been thinking about Gab and MeWe. Telegram is a messaging app I don't know. At this point, there's part of me that really wants to be in control of as much of that as I can. And, you know, it's a lot easier for me to control what I have hands on. And again, I've been in IT for 30 years. I have no problem running websites. I have no, if I had, if I could get decent internet out here, I live out in the boonies. If I get if I get a decent internet pipe, I'd set up a computer I have computers in my office right here. I could set up my own web host right here. My internet connection is not that good. I do it. So, mostly what I want to do is I want to get the message out. That's why when I look at MeWe and Gab and all these other platforms, mostly I want people to, I want my message out so that people can find me and maybe be interested and driven back to the website where things are a little more secure. By the way, one of the ways around what happened to me on Facebook is if you register, if you sign up for my newsletter, there's a checkbox that says, send me all your posts. And it becomes automatic, right? So when I release a new post, when I release a new article or a video on the website, you get an email. It makes life a lot easier. So you like the idea of Telegram, huh? Well, I'll tell you what, get Unapologetic Christian. I will make a note here. Where'd it go? There it is. And Investigate, Gab, and Telegram. I will do that. And, again, if you can share, wonderful. And again, anybody here who is still on Facebook, if you used to see me on Facebook, let people know I'm now on the website and, yes, Stalinism, use whatever ism you want. It's totalitarianism. It's Marxist, it's Stalinist, some of it's Maoist, but it's the idea. To me, it boils down to one simple concept. It's the arrogance of believing that you have the authority to tell other people how to live their life. That's what it boils down to. And whether it's the cancel culture, whether it's all these deplatformings, whether it's the Karens and the masks and the shutdowns and the lockdowns, it's this idea that you have the moral, if not legal authority to tell someone else how to live their life. That is not freedom. That is tyranny. Scott G votes for Telegram. Okay, well, I guess I'll be looking at Telegram tomorrow. All right. Could there probably be there are too many people in the country? Imagine being a senator of a state that has millions of people to represent. How to fix this? Well, all right, Antifellas, let's back up a couple steps. I see where you're going, and I see this a lot of time because there's the Second Amendment that was in the bill of proposed for the Bill of Rights there were 12 amendments actually proposed for the Bill of Rights. Only 10 got passed. The second had to do with setting a maximum number of people for a House of member. Right. The problem we have is twofold. Remember, the role of the Senate is to represent the states, not the people. The reason we have a House of Representatives and a Senate, there's several reasons. One of them is the House of Representatives represents the people, right? That's why they're elected by the people. Now, the senators were originally elected by the state legislatures because their job was to represent the states. Remember, the states created the federal government. So originally you had, in order to pass legislation, it had to pass the people's house and it had to pass the state's house. But then we changed it and we said, no, we're going to let the people elect the senators anyway. So now we basically have two people's houses. So it's not a question of how many people there are in the country. The problem is in the case of senators, the senators doing the job not supposed to. Their job is to represent the states. We should that's where I'm looking for. We should repeal the 17th Amendment let the state legislatures, let the states have a say in federal legislation again. Repeal the 17th Amendment. Everyone's going to go back one crazy, but that's really what we should do. Step one. Step two, stop looking to the federal government to do everything. The federal government is designed to focus on foreign affairs, not domestic affairs. 90% of the agencies, of the executive agencies, have no constitutional basis. They are illegal. You want to fix this? Stop looking for the federal government to do what it's not doing. Let us re-educate our states to understand the states oversee the federal government. I'm going to say that again because you've been taught this wrong in school. The federal government does not oversee the states. The states oversee the federal government. Now, if you remember your supremacy clause, it says the Constitution and the laws of the United States made pursuant thereof are the supreme law of the land. Meaning any law that is not pursuant to the federal Constitution, any federal law not pursuant to the U.S. Constitution is not supreme. And in fact, according to both Alexander Hamilton and the Marbury versus Madison case, that law is void, right? Let's get the states to start. Let's re-educate the states, say that's a state issue. That's a state function. You, in order to protect my rights, you must protect your right to be to that state power. We started getting, several years ago, it was Kansas, I believe. Yes, it was Kansas. They passed some Second Amendment Protection Act. They said the firearm or firearm accessory made, sold, and kept within the state of Kansas was not subject to federal firearms laws, which, by the way, is absolutely legal. It's constitutional. It's true. It's the way it should be. Excuse me. Then Governor Sam Brownback said, if a federal agent comes in to try and enforce federal law in violation of this act, they will go to jail, which worked right up until the first time the ATF came in and arrested somebody. These two guys, these poor schlubs who believed their state representatives, who believed their state government, who believed their governor when they said that they would defend them under this law, ended up in federal jail because they believed their state governor. You want to fix this? We need to get control of the states. We need the states to stand up and say, listen, federal government, 10th Amendment says you can't do that. 10th Amendment says it's our domain. Whine and cry and scream all you want. Too blank bad. Next thing we need to do is we need to repeal. So we got to repeal the 17th Amendment. We got to get the states to stand up. Then we got to repeal the 16th Amendment so that the federal government doesn't have direct access to our pocketbooks. Make the federal government go through the states again. Amazing what happens when you follow the original intent of the Constitution. So those are the three things you do. But notice it all starts with, you know what? I really don't care if your state rep, your state senator knows who you are, but your state rep and your state senator, you're a member of the U.S. House, don't care. Member of your state house, absolutely, they should know who you are. You should be familiar to them. And I don't just mean an email. I don't even mean a phone call, especially those of you who live near the state capitol. If not, they come home. Take them out to breakfast. Have a conversation with them. Learn what their issues are. Explain to them your issues and do something very, very, very important. I had this conversation with my county sheriff. I met with my county sheriff. I said, listen, I just want to clear the air. I want to be all out in the open. When I pick up the phone and dial 911 and one of your deputies shows up, I want to make sure that they understand that his or her job is to protect my rights. That's it. They're not there to enforce state law. They're not there to enforce federal law. They're there to protect my rights. She goes, absolutely. I said, then you do that. Here's what I'll do for you. I said, when you do that and when they come for you, I'll be there. Pick up the phone. You want me to show up at a press conference? You want me to be there and help support the work you're doing? If you're defending my rights, I will defend you. We need to get off of our backsides. And same scenario, right? Next meeting I have with my state legislators. It's like, understand, if you stand up for states' rights, I will stand up for you. If you stand up for my rights and the rights of my rights to the state, I will stand up for you. If you fail to fulfill your oath of office, I will be against you. And I will be noisy about it. You know, it's one thing to just say, oh, I'm not going to vote for him. No. I'm going to make sure everybody I knows exactly why I can't vote for you, because you violated your oath of office. So, all right, let's see. There was more to that comment. Yeah. Well, you know what, Ellen Padgett, Kristen, maybe there's more times we can talk. I don't know. We'll see. I've actually considered time to time having more outside chat sessions. Of course, you could also become a Constitution scholar, and we can have more comments there. Maybe I'll talk about that a little more towards the end. Telegram tracks a number. Yep. Hence the war room on information. Talking about that. All right, BLM. Again, yep. On Padres, Christian talking about putting the ballots in a vault. It's a question about making it more difficult to commit fraud. You're never going to eliminate all fraud, but I'm sorry, when there's video of people magically producing cases of ballots out of nowhere when they're being delivered in the middle of the night without people watching. Even the idea of mail-in ballots, I understand this desire to be lazy, sit in your butt, not actually go down to a polling station. But you do realize you cannot have a fair election with a mail-in ballot. If you do a mail-in ballot, you're playing Russian roulette with your vote. Right? You request a ballot. The ballot is issued. It then goes out of the hands of the county election board, goes through the mail, magically shows up at your door. You take the ballot, you open the ballot, you fill the ballot out, you send it back. It is outside of your control. There is no chain of custody from the time the ballot is issued until it is counted. There are gigantic breaks in the chain of custody. I don't trust it. I just don't trust it. All right, about Christian, I will certainly take a look at Telegram and let you know. I know for some reason people have been promoting it to me, but I just didn't feel comfortable. I'll take a look at Telegram. Let's see. Rebecca Ray, what age should people start reading the Constitution? Or at least start reading the Constitution study. All right. My general rule of thumb is somewhere around middle school. In fact, right around that 7th, 8th grade mark seems to be a good place to go to get deeper into it. I look at the John Jay process. John Jay said you should read, study, teach, right? Diligently read and study the Constitution, read the Constitution, study the Constitution, teach your rising generation, be free. There's no reason why reading can't start right in elementary school. When they're learning to read, why can't they read that? Start in, and even before then, maybe even if they can't read it, but these ideas they can pick up if it's discussed. But when it comes to studying, when it comes to the actual Constitution study book, right about 7th or 8th grade, I think is the point when most young people, and again, your children better than I do, that they can comprehend the ideas. There's an organization I work with called the 917 Society. And their goal is to put a U.S. Constitution in the hands of every eighth grader in America every year. If you want more, you can check out 917society.org, I believe. But I like that. I think eighth grade is really a good part to get into the deeper stuff. Might as well let you know, I'm planning on exhibiting at several homeschool events. There's several homeschool conferences. I've been to some before, but I'm actually showing up. I just signed up for the one in Nashville in March. So anybody here is in the Nashville area, I will be there. But I talk a lot to homeschoolers, and that's generally the rule of thumb that I use is right there, middle school, right about that eighth grade. I was up last year. I was invited. I went up to North Dakota in February, and I had about 150, 200 middle school, high school students and their parents, and we had a great time. In fact, I don't know if where'd he go? Is he still on? I don't know if he's still. I don't know if Coach is still on. If Coachman is still on, he was there. Oh yeah. There he is. He just lost 200, 600 pounds. Yeah, cool. But we had a great time, and I think that's it. But I'm looking at other tools to help, regardless of the age range. I'm not looking to target elementary school students. I don't think it's not what I'm good at, and I don't know that the more abstract content would make sense. But for those of you who don't know, and I have a group called or a program called the Constitution Scholar, and I'm in the middle of refreshing it, and you can get a sneak peek. It's not fully done yet, but you can sign up and find out. Go to constitutionscholars.com. I'll put in here. For anybody that wants to check it out, you can register for free, right? You don't have to pay a dime. If you want to progress through the program, there's a fee. But if you just want to pop in and play with what's there, it's absolutely free to register. There's no time limit, right? But what you get is I'm putting classes up there. I'm still building them, but I've put a couple up that, but again, some of the classes I've worked on, you can get them there. That's a good resource. I've put up a library. So you can actually read online a couple of my books. They're available up on constitutionscholars.com. I added, so I've got the classroom, I've got the library, I've got a shop so you can buy books and stuff like that. But the best part, the most fun part is the community. So there's the idea is right now I've got 4 groups, right? I've got the group that everyone's in, and I've got my 3 levels of scholars, my apprentice, my journeyman, and my master's. I want to expand that. I want to have groups, like I want people to have groups for their own state. So I think it'd be pretty cool if everybody that had a state where you could gather and chat about state issues. You could find other people in your state. You could blog about what's going on in your state. You could friend people, send messages back and forth. I think that'd be absolutely wonderful. I'd like to see them based on topics. So maybe we create a group for the Bill of Rights or the First Amendment or something like that. But it's a place where people can interact. And I think that would be a great place for students to get started, because it's, I want it to be a little bit more like social media. I'm not trying to be Facebook, but I just want a place where people could find each other and chat. I think one of the biggest problems we have is we think we're alone. We don't realize that. So, that is another place you may want to investigate. And again, register for free. If at some point you decide you want to go on and become an apprentice and start learning, the idea being is everybody gets into play. If you want to become really become a scholar. You start as an apprentice and you get taught. As an apprentice, you're there to learn. I'd like to find a mentor, someone that can not only give you access to resources, but someone that can help you answer your questions and help bring you along, help educate you as you become, um, uh, as you go through the journey. Now, at some point, when you've been apprentice and you've learned, you kind of graduate to becoming a journeyman. And the role of a journeyman is, I expect them to teach others, not necessarily, I mean, I might pair them up with a new apprentice who's just getting started, but I'm thinking, maybe they'd have a Constitution study in their town. Maybe they'd be more engaged in, with their elected officials. They might do a little bit of writing. We might collaborate on some stuff, right? But a journeyman is someone who's out. They're still learning. They might be under the tutelage of a master, but they're still learning, but they're able to start teaching others. And then the masters are the ones that they've really kind of mastered it. Not only the Constitution, but the techniques of reading and teaching others. And the masters are the ones that I really want to work with closely. They're the ones that have the closest relationship with, because I'm helping them teach others as well. And I think that growing environment would be would be interesting. That's what I'm trying to do. So again, head over there, check that out, see what you think. See, Kevin, you've been reading How to Read the Constitution in 30 Days. Learn so much. That's great to hear, Kevin. I love to hear people learn. Well, all right. So Kevin, there is a print version of, so Kevin's been reading a book. Again, to me, there are 3 steps, right? There's read, there's study, there's teach. So to help people read, I created a book called Read the Constitution in 30 Days. And I laugh. I say 30 days because people don't believe me when I say you can do it in 30 minutes. But it's set up as a daily devotional. The idea is every day you open the book up. It's a 6x9 book. You've got 2 pages. You've got the Constitution and a short commentary. And it's really meant to be that read portion, right? So, by the way, there is a print version available on the Constitution Scholar store. It's, when I sell in person, it's my biggest seller. So it's there. But I got a couple things in the works, and I'll let you guys in on a little secret. Secret number 1. I'm actually working on an audiobook version of this. So each, right now the plan is to have every day be an MP3, and you can download the whole set in a zip file or something, and every day you could listen to one of those. And if you're like me, you listen to stuff in the car or whatnot, there's an audiobook version, and I'm working on it. Here's the other thing. What would you say to a service where every day I email you that day's reading, or eventually that day's listening from the book? So the idea is, you sign up like $2. That's kind of what I think. $2, $3, something like that. And every day you get an email with either the text version or eventually the audio version of that day's reading. And then you can do it either one time, or if you're like me and you like to read through it over and over again, you can do it as a monthly subscription, right? So once a month, $2, and I start sending you that, that day's text or audio every day automatically for that. So if you like that idea, if you think that's an idea, let me know, because I've been really busy and I really want to get some time to work on it. But I've had a couple people express some interest. I think that would be that would be really cool. And oh, by the way, Kevin, so yeah, there is a print version, and you can buy the book. You can buy it on Amazon. I'm still on Amazon. I have no easy way to get Amazon prints my books, so I have no easy way to get off of them yet. But I appreciate that. If you can, leave me a review. Let me know let me know how things are going, and let other people know that you're learning, that it's useful, that you find it helpful. That helps as well. Let's see. There are gun subreddit pages for all 50 states. You know what? I haven't really played with Reddit, and I don't know. I found it in searches when I've been looking for stuff, but I don't know. To me, Reddit never seemed to be that organized for the way I do things. But I don't know. But in this case, we're talking about there's a subreddit for the gun, right? The gun stuff in the 50 states. I'm waiting for, well, they're just going to start kicking people off. So I'm trying to make plans to survive when they start kicking people off. And like I said, I've already been kicked off Facebook. Twitter hasn't bothered me. YouTube hasn't bothered me. Parler got shut down, although it's coming back. They say they're coming back eventually, pretty soon. They keep saying, who knows what's happening next. I want to make sure that whatever I do, I'm in control of it, because at this point, I don't trust the powers that be to deal freely and fairly with people. So what are you going to do? So, well, let's see. Well, it's an hour and 20 minutes. I've pretty much covered what I want to talk about with the election reform. Just to review, yes, we need election reform. We need to do it at the state level. We need to stop looking at the federal government to fix all of our boo-boos for us. We need to take responsibility for our elected representatives. We need to be talking to them about how do we make sure what happened in these states never happens here. And if it has happened here, how do we make sure it never happens again? Never again, never again, never again. November 3rd, 2020 looked more like a banana republic. I would expect that out of Iran, not out of the United States of America. I'm embarrassed. And I think a lot of people should be embarrassed by how badly that election was handled. And regardless of the winner, regardless of the outcome, it was handled so badly, we should be embarrassed. And let's talk to our county boards of election. Let's talk to our states. Let's fix it there. And you know what, Antifed? If your sheriff would laugh you out of the room, then inform him or her that then they are eminently disqualified themselves for office. They are, one of the best parts. When I showed up at the sheriff's office, I said, listen, I don't want to take too much of your time. He goes, no. He said, his words, I work for you. Right? The sheriff works for the people. Again, if you are not a qualified sheriff, then my job is to educate everybody I can in this county why you are unqualified for office. I'm done with telling people I won't vote for them. It's like, I will make sure everybody knows just how evil and corrupt you are, how much you lie about your oath. You're violating your oath. You've lied to your people. That makes you evil, corrupt, and unqualified. And I will do everything I can to let everybody I can know just how evil and corrupt and unqualified you are. Now, if you would like to keep your job, if you'd like to make it easier to keep your job, you may want to listen to what I have to say. If you're not interested in that, or if you think I just don't matter, then watch while I make your life as uncomfortable as I possibly can for every mistake you make. And if that means I have to, again, whatever, what is our liberty worth? What is it going to take to say, really? You work for the people of this county. I'm one of the people of this county. I pay your salary. And you're going to laugh at me for that. How about I laugh at you as I vote for whoever is next? I don't care if they're an R, a D, a Q, a P, a whatever. But I'm tired of having elected officials acted like kings and queens. You are my employee. You don't work just for me, but you are my employee. And how do I treat an employee that disrespects me like that? I fire them. And if I can't do it individually, I'll do everything I can to do it corporately. Period. End of story. It's not a question of if, it's a question, it's getting over the idea that they are our rulers. They are not our rulers. They're only our rulers or our masters because we let them, because we have been trained and taught that that we work at their sufferance, and it's not what the law says. And I'm going to follow the law. And if you don't want to follow the law, you're not qualified. Next. And you know what? If one person does that, nothing's going to happen. Two people do that, nothing's going to happen. Depending on the size of your county, you get a couple dozen people that start saying, you know what? You're going to treat me like that? Fine. I'm going to, I don't care what you're going to do. I'm going to get on the local radio station. I'm going to put bulletins up documenting just how, just every time you violated your oath of office. There you go. And start educating the people about what's really going on. And who knows? We're not responsible for the outcome, but we're responsible for at least trying. Anti-federalists, kind of like I just said, my job is not to make how do I put this? I'm not responsible for how they act. I'm responsible for how I act. And this idea that, well, you can't fight City Hall is a large portion of the reason why we have an out of control federal government. It's why we have a weak-kneed state government. It's why we have tyrannical sheriffs. It's why we have people being arrested and tased for being out in public without a mask. It's why we have businesses being shut down, businesses being taken, lives being destroyed, because we've all been told you can't fight City Hall. Well, you can fight. You may win, you may not win, but who was it that said that I regret that I have but one life to give for my country? No one's asking you to give your life. Just in a little bit of effort, just to break the mold of complacency, of servanthood, and put on the mantle of citizenship. And if people laugh and point and call you names, okay. But there's an interesting phenomenon. See, if you're alone, it's really hard to do. And I understand it. I'm not trying to minimize that. But it's when people stand up. It's not when the first person stands up. It's when the second person stands up and says, no. The first person stands up and says, no. They might be in for a little bit of a rough time. Second person stands up and says, no. People start to look. There's a great video. I used it in one of my videos of, I believe it's a restaurant in Buffalo, New York, the Empire State, Cuomoville. And I think it was a health department inspector came in with 2 sheriff's deputies. And you know what the people did? When the owner stood up and said, no, you're not wanted here, you're trespassing, you don't have a warrant, the people stood behind the owner. The people shouted them down and got the 2 sheriff's deputies and the code enforcement to leave, because because the business owner stood up, but then other people stood up behind him. If more and more people were willing to stand with those, not everybody's got the attitude, the position to stand up and say no, but if more people would stand behind them, if more people would, then we might start seeing a change. Oh, Texas secession. That's a whole kettle of fish I don't want to get into right now. Because the only way Texas secede is to break the Constitution. Can Texas do it? Every state could. They could simply say, no, we're not a party here anymore, and walk away. They've broken the Constitution to do it. And would I move there? I probably, Texas was actually on the list. I considered moving to Texas. My wife didn't want to, but it depends. Texas seceding from the Union a state seceding from the Union is not the answer. A state that lives up to its own constitution is the answer, whether it's a part of the Union or not. See, the problem with Texas is, well, how do I want to put this? The problem with Texas is, while they do a lot of things right, they still don't follow their own constitution. So if you break away from the Union, you've made it harder to do business with the other states. But if you don't fix the problem with your constitution, what are you going to do? On the other hand, if Texas actually stood up to its constitution, meaning if it lived up to its constitution and included standing up to the federal government when they encroach on their rights, and I don't mean just talk, I mean action. I mean arresting federal officers that violate the U.S. Constitution, that violate Texas law. Then, whether they're in the Union or not, people will flood to it. People want to go where their rights are protected. You don't need to leave. Texas doesn't need to leave the Union. Texas needs to fulfill its oath to the Constitution. Every state needs to live up to their Constitution. And if the states did that, secession wouldn't be an issue because the federal government would be the neutered, limited, restricted, confined government that our founding fathers created. So thanks for the thumbs up there, Coach. And with that, I'm going to give it a wrap. We've been about an hour and a half, and I appreciate everybody that came on live. I appreciate all the questions. I don't know about you, but I love the questions and answers. Please head on over to the website, constitutionstudy.com. If you want to share this video, it will probably be up about noon Central Time. You'll be able to find it on the website, on Rumble, and on YouTube. And, well, YouTube will be up there right away. But with all that, have a great night. Be safe. Watch out for 2021. And I'll see you again next time right here on the Constitution Study.